you haven't traveled back in time. This is Hop and Marty, a retro 3D platformer built for a modern gaming era. I recently had the chance to sit down with the game's developer, EvilKookey, and we discussed everything, from his inspiration, to the tools and processes he used to make the game, to how he hopes to recapture some of that 90s feel and charm, including the iconic music style of composer Grant Kirkhope. Now, if you're an older millennial, like me, then this game is going to hit you hard in the nostalgia with its strong Banjo-Kazooie vibes. And if you're a younger gamer who perhaps didn't grow up playing the N64,
it's the new Nintendo 64.
Then hopefully this game will give you a chance to experience the cultural phenomenon that shook 90s gaming. I'm your host, Jonathan Haloka, and this is your first look at Hop and Marty, here on Indie Game Discovery.
My name is Greg Balboni, and I'm currently working on Hop and Marty, which is a 3D collectathon platformer in the same style as games like Banjo-Kazooie, Super Mario 64. And what I'm really trying to do is capture the sort of visual and gameplay style of the era, so I've kept it to low poly models, low resolution textures to really sort of invoke that nostalgic feeling.
I think you've done a really great job of that, and I can say that this is probably the closest thing I've seen to an N64 game without it actually being on the N64. There are a lot of 3D platformers out there though, so how do you really distinguish this one, and who is your audience?
There's obviously still 3D platformers out there, but that exact kind of 3D platformer, that sort of whimsical exploration collecting, has sort of become less popular. And so I'm thinking that people who grew up with that style of game and want something new that evokes that same kind of feeling will really like this game. But I'm also hoping that it maybe appeals to a younger audience as well, and it can sort of be for them what Banjo-Kazooie was for me.
Banjo-Kazooie is one of my all-time favorite games as well, and I think that's what really caught my attention about your game in the first place and why I was so looking forward to doing this interview. Can you tell me a bit more about Banjo-Kazooie's influence on Hop and Marty?
When it comes to like the gameplay, it very much is heavily inspired by Banjo-Kazooie. Growing up, that was my favorite game. And it's also a franchise that, it's not really been used much. There's a lot of people online, me included, would love to see a new Banjo-Kazooie game, and I'm kind of hoping this fills that void.
I think there's a lot of people on the Banjo-Kazooie subreddit who might feel the same, so fingers crossed there. What other 90s games do you take inspiration from?
Sort of take inspiration from 90s gaming as a whole. One of the areas I'm really excited about in the game is that one of the levels is inspired by classic survival horror games. Games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, which is a bit more detached from the sort of colourful 3D platformers and instead takes inspiration from a different genre from the same era. I wanted the levels in Hop and Marty to be a little bit different. That's where I came up with the idea for the horror level that I mentioned. Other games have done, for example, in Banjo-Kazooie, it had Mad Monster Mansion, which was like a haunted house theme. I thought it would be really interesting to have it be more inspired by like the foggy abandoned streets in Silent Hill. I really want it to feel like a celebration of that era of gaming.
Let's talk Hop and Marty themselves. Who exactly are these characters?
Marty is the monkey that is the character you play as for most of the time. Specifically, he is a white-tufted marmoset, and I picked a white-tufted marmoset simply because it's my favourite animal. The idea for Hop came a little bit later. Yeah, he is based on the poison dart frog, which are small, colourful, and very poisonous frogs, and I just also very much like frogs. Hop and Marty have different movesets. Hop being a frog, he can jump higher, he can use his tongue as like a grappling hook. Both of those animals are native to South American countries and specifically the rainforests, and so I felt like having them pair up made sense.
I think one of the main issues people might have with games from the 90s, and Super Mario 64 is probably the main offender when it comes to this, is that the controls can feel a little bit jarring, especially when you're used to the quality of controls from modern era 3D platformers. So how do you keep that balance between giving this game a 90s feel, but also making the controls feel natural and modern?
Creating this game in Unity, a lot of the input system and physics system that Unity has helps to sort of smooth out that process. I feel like in platformers, 3D platformers specifically, the controls and the movement are the most important thing, because if it doesn't feel good to move around, that has a knock-on effect on everything in the game. So the first thing I did when making the game was prototype the character controller and then continually modified it, iterated on it, and just constantly improved it to a point where it felt smooth and it felt responsive.
I couldn't agree more, and I'm really happy to hear you've put so much time and consideration into making the game feel good to play. Let's talk about the art direction though. Obviously your game has a very distinctive look, so can you tell me a bit about that?
I don't have a lot of professional experience with the art and design aspects, so those were things I more sort of self-taught in, and it was a really fun experience iterating through different level designs and learning Blender, which I use for the 3D art of the game. And I think I've gotten to a point where when making the levels in the game, I've got quite a good system for designing these open 3D environment levels. But to start with, it was quite a challenge. It was something I didn't have a lot of experience in and had to really sort of practice and learn.
Like I said, this game looks like it's straight off of the N64, so hats off to you having done such a good job on that. Lastly, I want to ask you about the game's musical direction. Banjo-Kazooie and other rare games from the N64 had the legendary composer Grant Kirkhope behind them, who has such an iconic style. So how do you recapture or reimagine that, or do you take it in a completely different direction?
Going for something that fits the overall vibe of whatever level it's in, whilst having that Grant Kirkhope inspired style, I think pairs really well with the 90s style of game that I'm making. And so when it came to the music, something Grant Kirkhope inspired was what I wanted to go for. Music that you hear in the trailer as well as in the demo was made by another composer, but he's a really good composer. He did some great work. He reached out to me taking interest in the game and wrote the music that you see there, and I think he did a great job with it.
EvilKookey, thank you so much for your time today. Is there a demo? When can we expect to see the full game?
The demo is out now. It's available on Steam. It has the entire first level, a slightly modified version to also include some more instruction and tutorialization. The full game, I don't have a definite release date yet, but I'm hoping it won't be too much longer now before I can get it released.
That wraps things up for today. And now, I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about Hop and Marty? Are you going to try the demo? Will you try the full game? Let us know in the comments. Also, please consider liking, subscribing to the channel, maybe even sharing the video if you really enjoyed it. It would definitely help us grow. Other than that, we'll see you in the next one.